So the iPhone 16 Pro Max is finally here, and we've got some decisions to make. With the iPhone 15 Pro Max now going for about $1,000 and the iPhone 16 Pro Max starting at around $1,200, there are two major questions to answer in this video. First, if you're coming from an older iPhone, should you upgrade to the iPhone 16 Pro Max or get the iPhone 15 Pro Max? Secondly, should you upgrade if you already own the iPhone 15 Pro Max? At the end of this video, we'll help you know which way to go, and so without taking much of your time, yo guys, let's get started. The unboxing experience on both smartphones, well, it's classic Apple, sleek, minimal packaging. Inside both of these devices, you get the same stuff: a USB-C to C cable, a SIM ejector tool, and a tiny pamphlet or Apple Docs. Also, you get the smartphones here. Honestly, the moment you hold these devices side by side, you'll notice that the iPhone 16 Pro Max is slightly larger. It's just 0.2 inches larger in terms of display, but it feels more immersive for some reason. That extra screen space is low-key noticeable. Both smartphones still rock that sleek titanium frame, but Apple decided to ditch the blue color this year. Instead, we get a desert titanium finish on the iPhone 16 Pro Max. It's got this subtle golden vibe that really stands out. And if you liked the blue, yeah, sorry about that, it's no longer here for the iPhone 16 Pro Max. I also realized I didn't really like this color, the desert titanium finish, so I will buy the black titanium and get rid of this one. In hand, the iPhone 16 Pro Max feels slightly taller and wider. You might think it's just a minor change, but trust me, you'll feel it when using this device. As far as the weight, they weigh about the same, and the difference is in the sizing of these devices. The camera bump on the iPhone 16 Pro Max is a bit chunkier, and they've added a new camera control button to the side of the smartphone. We'll talk more about that in the camera section of this video, but let's just say it's not exactly that life-changing feature you'd hope for. IP rating is about the same, IP68, nothing major here aside what I've mentioned. Both smartphones come with great stereo speakers. They're loud, clear, and offer decent bass. The microphones on these devices do a solid job, especially in noisy environments. Even though sometimes I felt like the iPhone 16 Pro Max speakers sounded better, I'm still not clear if it's a bias from my end. I think both of them are great. Both smartphones come with 120Hz ProMotion displays and peak brightnesses of about 2000 nits. So whether you're outdoors or gaming indoors, the screens look fantastic. The big difference here is the 16 Pro Max gives you a little more space, 6.9 inches versus 6.7 inches on the 15 Pro Max. Sure, it's just 0.2 inches, but it feels more immersive when watching videos or scrolling through social media. I didn't think that could make a difference, but it does. For some, the larger size would be a win, and for others like me, it might just feel a little too much. See, I've always loved the Pro variants of iPhones. I only got the Pro Max for the 15 because of the camera differences between those two devices. The Maxes are just enormous and uncomfortable in the hands if you don't have big hands. Anyway, which do you prefer? Big displays and devices or the smaller ones? Let me know in the comment section below. Under the hood, the iPhone 16 Pro Max has the A18 Pro chip compared to the A17 Pro on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. But here's the thing, in everyday use, the speed difference is barely noticeable. Both smartphones are ridiculously fast. Now, if you push these devices to their limits and try to play the most tasking titles or maybe export videos and the likes, you would begin to notice the 15% CPU and 20% GPU differences between these two devices. Speaking of GPU, when it comes to gaming, both iPhones handle everything smoothly, and you might not notice the difference for regular titles. Here are the benchmark scores for these two devices. Apple's new intelligence features will roll out on both of these devices later in the year. So as far as software, none of these devices have an advantage over the other currently. So there's really no exclusive wow feature that makes the iPhone 16 Pro Max the obvious winner. Maybe one more year of update on the iPhone 16 Pro Max down the line in the future. But these combined, the future year update and the slightly better processor would give the edge to the iPhone 16 Pro Max. By the way, both are currently on iOS 18, which I made a video for on this channel. You can check it out here. Now onto the cameras, the real question is, how different are they really? Both models still have the 48 megapixel primary sensor, but the iPhone 16 Pro Max adds a 48 megapixel ultra-wide camera from the 12 megapixel sensor last year, while still maintaining the same 12 megapixel telephoto lens and selfie camera. Starting with the selfies, honestly, the differences are subtle. The iPhone 16 Pro Max and the iPhone 15 Pro Max produce great photos, and if you look closely, the photos from the iPhone 16 Pro Max look a bit brighter, but that's not a giant leap. At other times, they are practically the same, and when it comes to selfie portrait mode, Apple hasn't changed much here. I could hardly tell them apart. When shooting front-facing videos, there were moments when I actually preferred the 15 Pro Max. In some shots, The 16 Pro Max looked a bit too red, which didn't vibe with me, especially on darker skin tones. But other times they were so similar that we could swap one for the other without noticing. It's a mixed bag. Sometimes the iPhone 15 Pro Max wins, and at other times the 16 Pro Max wins. Now with the rear cameras, things start to get a little more interesting. Both smartphones maintain consistent exposure levels, but the 16 Pro Max stands out when it comes to handling shadows. I noticed this across multiple shots. The 16 Pro Max gives a bit more depth and detail in those darker areas, making the shots feel richer. When you look closely, there's also a slight color difference between the two. It feels like the 16 Pro Max leans a little more into red, or maybe it pulls back on the greens just a bit. It's subtle, but it's there, and if you're someone who notices this small shift, you'll spot it. On the darker skin tones, I found myself preferring the 15 Pro Max because it seemed to handle those tones with more balance, whereas the 16 Pro Max leaned a little too red. As far as sharpness, the iPhone 16 Pro Max adds a bit more contrast to its photos, almost like Apple borrowed a page from Samsung's playbook with the S24 Ultra's brightening and sharpening approach. This makes the 16 Pro Max's photos feel a little sharper, but the difference is small enough that you would only notice if you're pixel peeping. Both smartphones feature 5x optical zoom, giving you the same flexibility for close-ups. The ultra-wide seems more detailed on the 16 Pro Max, and it's because of the sensor change here. Also, that translates to better macro shots with a newer sensor on this device. Moving on to the video, they are very close, and if you're not looking at them side by side, you probably won't notice the difference. There's a subtle color or temperature shifts in the iPhone 16 Pro Max's videos. Again, that slight red tint pops up, but it's not a deal breaker. You also get the higher 4K resolution for the slow motion videos with the cameras on the newer phone against 1080p on the 15 Pro Max. Overall, the 16 Pro Max's better shadow handling makes a difference in photos, but the 15 sometimes delivers more natural video, especially with the skin tones. It really comes down to personal preference here. Both devices shoot excellent videos. Unless you're a hardcore pixel peeper, either one will work perfectly for your needs. Regarding the mic quality during video recording, I liked the 15 Pro Max's microphone better, and it seemed to pick up cleaner sound most of the time. Yo guys, right here is a recording in 4K 30fps for the front-facing cameras on the iPhone 16 Pro Max and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. The battery life is where the 16 Pro Max pulls ahead, but just by a hair. It packs a slightly larger battery that benefits from the more efficient chipset, so you get a bit more screen on time. The difference wasn't huge in my test, but it was there enough to get you through the day a bit more comfortably. Both smartphones support fast charging, and Apple's usual MagSafe wireless charging is available on these devices, so no significant differences in the charging department. If you're coming from an older iPhone, say the 13 or the 14 series, then the iPhone 16 Pro Max is a worthy upgrade. You'll love the bigger screen, improved camera, and the better battery life. But if you already own the iPhone 15 Pro Max, honestly, you're not missing out much. The upgrades are nice, but more like minor improvements rather than must-have features. Unless the Desert's titanium color is calling your name, or you really care about the ultra-wide camera upgrades, the camera control button, and maybe the slightly better battery life, then you might want to skip this one. So what's your verdict? Are you upgrading or waiting it out? Drop a comment below and I'd love to hear your thoughts down there. And if this video helped you, do not forget to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to know more about the iPhone 16 Pro Max, you can check out my full review here. I'ma catch you in the next one. Cuidate.